The twin moons of Caleri Prime hung low over the crystalline spires when everything began to fall apart. Not dramatically at first, but with the slow, irritating unraveling that suggested the universe had woken up in a mischievous mood. Lysera sensed it the moment she walked into the Hall of Concord, where diplomats from 7-star systems were already arguing about who had brought the wrong ceremonial fruit. She tried to ignore them. Vowing never to marry was easy, avoiding diplomatic chaos, impossible. Her long ears twitched in mild annoyance, earning a few stares from visitors who had never seen a Caleri up close. She ignored those too. Her day worsened when the human delegation arrived, boots echoing like thunder across the glass floors. At their front was Commander Ryan Hale, who walked as if the entire hall was a training ground he might need to sprint across at any moment. Lysera studied him just long enough to confirm he looked far too confident for a man entering a room where every faction despised each other. He caught her eye, smiled, and said, "Nice architecture. Does it come in travel size?" Her ears betrayed her by flicking upward in amusement, and she cursed them silently. The proceedings had barely begun when the lights flickered. A hum rolled through the hall, soft but threatening, the kind of sound old reactors made right before exploding. Ryan's hand went to his sidearm. Lysera lifted a palm disapprovingly. "If you draw that, every ambassador will panic." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Good point. I'd hate to start interstellar war before lunch." But the hum grew louder. Panels on the far wall trembled, and then a shockwave burst through the room, sending delegates sprawling and knocking over an entire tray of ceremonial fruit. Lysera barely shielded her face before a shard of crystal struck her arm. Ryan rushed to her side. "Are you hurt?" She waved him off while brushing debris from her tunic. "I am dignified, not fragile." Another tremor made the ceiling groan ominously. On second thought, move. They ducked behind a fallen pillar as alarms blared. Over the speakers, someone shouted that a rogue faction had infiltrated the summit. Someone else shouted that it was their rival's fault. Someone in the back asked hopefully if the summit was canceled. Ryan peeked around the pillar. "So, is this normal diplomatic procedure on your planet?" Lysera resisted the urge to laugh. "Only on days ending with Y." Security forces scattered through the hall. Lysera took command because no one else seemed able to string together a coherent sentence amid the chaos. Ryan followed her without hesitation, which was suspiciously convenient. "You're surprisingly calm," she observed while leading him through a side corridor. "Training," he answered, "and also panic makes me hiccup, so I avoid it." She almost smiled. The corridor shook again. They passed a viewport where a plume of energy blossomed from the lower levels, too controlled to be random damage. Lysera frowned. "It's deliberate. They're using phase disruptors to destabilize the energy lattice." Ryan blinked. Translation. "They want the building to fall on our heads." "Got it, not ideal." They reached the security station, just in time to find it abandoned. Consoles flickered with corrupted data. Lysera sifted through it, her fingers dancing over glowing glyphs. "They breached from the undercity tunnels," she murmured. "They're heading for the central core." Ryan leaned over her shoulder. "Is that bad?" "If they overload the core, it'll trigger a resonance collapse. This entire district will fold like wet paper." Ryan nodded with forced enthusiasm. "Right, so we should stop them before the folding happens." "I like not being folded." Their earpieces crackled with confused reports. No one knew what the rogue faction wanted or why they had chosen today. Lysera's frustration spiked. She had warned the council that extremist cells were growing restless, but no one listened. It was hard to appear dangerous when your species was known for graceful dancing and long ears that betrayed every emotion. Ryan noticed her brooding expression. "Hey, we'll figure it out. Worst case, you push me at the enemy as a distraction. Humans bounce better than most species." She huffed despite herself. "If necessary." They descended through maintenance shafts lit by pulsing blue veins of energy. The hum from earlier grew stronger the lower they traveled. Ryan scanned the shadows with his visor. "This place looks like the inside of a giant neon worm." "Your metaphors are consistently strange." "Thanks, I practice." Her ears flicked again. She pretended it was dust. At the bottom of the shaft, they emerged into the undercity tunnels, ancient, bioluminescent pathways carved long before her ancestors' documented history. The air shimmered with pale light, revealing markings etched by civilizations older than memory. Ryan whistled. If I get lost, tell my superiors I died heroically, or tripped, probably tripped. She stepped ahead. Stay close. These tunnels shift unpredictably. Fantastic. Shape-shifting hallways, my favorite. They moved carefully, following the rising hum. The floor vibrated with each step. Lysera's instincts sharpened. Danger pressed against her senses like static. She slowed, raising a hand. Ryan froze instantly. Ahead, a fissure in the wall emitted a cascade of sparks. Someone had forced an override panel open. Lysera knelt beside it, examining the circuitry. They bypassed 3 safeguards. Whoever did this knows Caleri tech intimately. Ryan crouched next to her. Could be an inside job. It must be. Outsiders don't even know these tunnels exist. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Ryan motioned for silence, drawing his weapon this time with her approval. Shadows stretched across the corridor, distorted by the flickering lights. Lysera pressed herself against the wall. Her heartbeat steadied, not out of calm but determination. She had promised never to be bound, never to let anyone claim her, but that vow didn't mean she would let her world fall apart. The footsteps grew louder. Ryan whispered, "If things go bad, you take the left, I'll take the right." "No," she whispered back. "You follow my lead." "Yes, ma'am." She wasn't sure if he was teasing her, respecting her, or both. 3 figures appeared, armed, masked, and clearly unfriendly. Lysera leapt first, disarming the closest attacker with a sweep of her arm. Ryan grabbed the second and wrestled him to the ground in a move that was half combat technique, half enthusiastic flailing. The third fired a plasma shot that scorched the air beside Lysera's ear. "Careful," she snapped. "I need that." Ryan managed to knock the shooter back, and the plasma weapon clattered across the floor. The attackers fled deeper into the tunnels. Lysera checked Ryan for injuries. "You're reckless." "I get that a lot. You could have been hurt." "You were there," he said simply. She blinked, ears tilting. For a moment, something warm flickered between them, quick, fragile, unwelcome. She turned away. "We need to keep going," she said. "Whatever they're planning, the core is their target." Ryan stood, dusting himself off. "Lead the way. I'll try not to die spectacularly." "Try harder than that." "No promises." They advanced into the deep tunnels, where the light dimmed and the hum grew into a pulse. Lysera felt the weight of her vow tightening like a chain around her thoughts. She had sworn off attachment, sworn off entanglements, sworn off the unpredictable chaos of emotion. Yet beside her walked a man who made the collapsing tunnels feel slightly less terrifying and somehow more complicated. He caught her glance and grinned. "Hey, at least if we get lost, I brought snacks." "You brought snacks to a diplomatic summit." "I face danger better on a full stomach." Against her will, her ears lifted in amusement. And in the dim glow of the Undercity, walking toward potential doom, Lysera realized that the vow she had clung to so fiercely might not be as unbreakable as she once believed. The tunnels twisted downward in long spirals that shimmered with ancient circuitry, glowing faintly as Lysera and Ryan passed. The hum beneath their feet grew stronger, vibrating through the stone like a low heartbeat. Ryan kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting the walls to suddenly develop a personality and greet him. "If this place starts talking," he whispered, "I'm quitting diplomacy forever." Lysera replied without looking back, "The tunnels don't talk." A beat passed. "They sing." Ryan nearly tripped. Wonderful, terrifying. They followed the fading traces of the rogue faction, remnants of heat signatures drifting along the tunnel floors like ghost footprints. Lysera paused now, and then to analyze a scrap of circuitry or a disrupted energy glyph, her long ears angling forward in concentration. Ryan watched her in quiet fascination, though he tried to mask it by pretending to analyze the ceiling. "These old structures," he said, tapping a stalactite with excessive thoughtfulness, "really hold up, don't they?" The stalactite crumbled into dust. He quickly stepped back behind her. "Never mind." Lysera's pace slowed as they approached a junction where the walls curved inward like ribs. She placed a hand on the stone and whispered a code phrase. Blue symbols flared to life, illuminating the corridor in cool light. "I thought you said these tunnels weren't in use," Ryan murmured. "They aren't," she replied. "But our ancestors stored their knowledge everywhere. They didn't trust central archives." Ryan chuckled. "So they were paranoid. They were practical." Same thing. The air thickened with the rising vibration from deeper below. Lysera motioned for silence, but Ryan had already sensed it too. Faint voices echoing through the metallic ribs. They approached slowly, weaving behind thick columns until they could see the source. 3 rogue operatives knelt around a circular device embedded in the floor, its core pulsing with violet energy. One of them adjusted a control panel, muttering, "Once this resonance field stabilizes, the council chamber collapses under its own harmonics." Ryan tapped Lysera's arm. "We should sneak up on them." Lysera nodded, quietly. "Absolutely." Ryan immediately stepped on a loose crystal shard that shattered with a noise loud enough to wake ancient spirits. The operatives spun toward them. Lysera sighed. "That was your definition of quietly." "Improvised distraction," he whispered as he dove behind a pillar. Blaster fire lit the air in streaks of blue. Lysera leapt forward, her movements sharp and fluid, using the columns for cover. Ryan fired back with disciplined bursts, his aim improving drastically compared to his last encounter. "I've been practicing," he called out. "On what?" she shouted. "A training sim. What difficulty level?" "Easy, of course." Lysera slid across the floor, knocking one operative backward with a sweep of her leg. Ryan tackled another, the two rolling dangerously close to the humming resonance device. "Please don't break it," Lysera warned. "I'm trying not to break myself first," Ryan grunted, elbowing his opponent into unconsciousness. The final operative tried to activate the device remotely, but Lysera reached him before he could complete the gesture, twisting his wrist and forcing the detonator from his hand. The room fell silent except for the steady pulse of the machine. Lysera inspected it closely, her brows furrowing. "This is old Caleri technology, but modified with human components." Ryan blinked. "Human. As in my species human?" "Yes," she murmured. "Someone supplied them with hybrid schematics." He crouched beside her. "Could be a stolen prototype or a black market piece." "No, this was built recently, and built well." She glanced at him. "Someone wants to implicate humans." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, looking more troubled than she'd seen him yet. "Great. Nothing says interstellar harmony like framing the visiting species. Sabotage at a peace summit is rarely organized by amateurs." She stood, her ears angling downward in thought. "We need to neutralize this device." Ryan studied it with skepticism. "Please tell me there's an off switch." "There is." She pointed to the glowing core. "You just have to not touch anything else while you press it." Ryan stared. "That sounds like the opposite of comforting." She carefully placed her fingers around the core, guiding him through the sequence. They pressed the final glyph together. The device powered down with a fading hum. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence settled between them like a fragile truce. Ryan broke it first. "So, do all of your security systems require emotional trust exercises?" She blinked. "That was not emotional. My hand touched yours. Accidentally. Still counts." Her ears twitched in flustered disagreement. They dragged the unconscious operatives to the side and continued deeper into the tunnels. Lysera felt the tension in her chest ease slightly, but confusion took its place. She was not supposed to be affected by anyone, especially not by someone who made jokes while wrestling armed traitors. As they walked, Ryan offered her a small protein bar from his pouch. "Snack break." She stared at it. "Now, well, we're between assassination attempts." She accepted it reluctantly. "You are strange." "I get that a lot." The tunnel walls widened into a massive chamber supported by spiraling pillars. In the center hovered a spherical structure covered in luminescent vines of circuitry. Lysera inhaled sharply. "The resonance heart." Ryan frowned. "Sounds important. It stabilizes the energy grid of this entire district if the rogue faction reaches it." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Ryan nodded grimly. "Then we stop them." They circled the edge of the chamber, remaining hidden behind thick strands of circuitry. Lysera could hear more voices, half a dozen this time. Ryan leaned close. "We can't take all of them by force. They're performing a calibration ritual," she whispered. "If they succeed, the heart will fall out of sync." He exhaled sharply. "We need a plan." "We do." She pointed to an elevated node. "If I overload that junction, the chamber will reset. It will knock them off balance. What about us? We hold on to something." Ryan gave her a skeptical look, then shrugged. "I've done worse. That does not comfort me." It wasn't meant to. While he created a distraction, throwing a small sonic beacon that bounced wildly and emitted confusing diplomatic announcements, Lysera climbed toward the junction node. The operatives turned in confusion as the beacon declared, "Please refrain from aggressive negotiations," followed by, "Snacks will be served after the ceasefire." Ryan muttered, "I downloaded the wrong audio file." "It's working," Lysera hissed. She reached the junction, pried open the panel, and began rerouting the power threads. The heart pulsed erratically. "Ryan," she shouted, "hold on to something. What exactly qualifies as something?" "Anything not glowing. Everything is glowing." The chamber surged with a burst of harmonic energy. Light rippled outward, knocking the operatives to the ground and scrambling their equipment. Lysera lost her grip and stumbled, but Ryan sprinted across the unstable floor, caught her arm, and held her upright as the chamber shook violently. The harmonics slowly stabilized, the resonance heart returning to its steady pulse. The rogue operatives fled, leaving their failed equipment behind. Ryan didn't release her arm immediately. His breath mingled with hers in the fading light. "You all right?" "Yes." Her voice was steady, but her heart was not. "You came quickly. You were falling. I can handle falling. I didn't want you to." Her ears tilted upward in a betraying flicker of warmth. She gently pulled her arm free. "We still have much to uncover." "Right," he said softly, though his eyes lingered for a moment longer. They started toward the next tunnel, the heart glowing quietly behind them. Lysera walked ahead, pretending she did not hear Ryan whisper to himself, "Great. Now I'm catching feelings in ancient death tunnels." She didn't comment, but her ears heard everything. And for the first time, she did not try to silence the quiet warmth curling inside her. The ascent from the resonance heart chamber took them into narrower tunnels, ones that pulsed with faint red light, as if the entire Undercity were warning them to turn back. Lysera and Ryan moved quickly, their footsteps echoing against the ancient stone. The rogue operatives had scattered, but the crisis wasn't over. Lysera could feel it in the tremor of the energy grid, in the subtle shift of pressure that indicated the central core was being tampered with. Ryan, meanwhile, sensed it in the way she kept glancing upward, her long ears tightening with each vibration. "That's your worry dear expression," he whispered. "I do not have a worry dear expression." "You absolutely do." She flicked them sharply. "Do not analyze my ears. Impossible, they're very expressive." She strode ahead to avoid replying. They reached a lift chamber, ancient, circular, and barely functional. Ryan eyed the platform with skepticism. "Is this safe?" "No," she answered, pulling the lever. "Fantastic," he muttered as the platform jerked upward with a groan like it resented being alive. When they emerged, they found themselves near the central core vault. Light spilled from the crack beneath the massive door, pulsing erratically. Ryan tapped his wrist console. "Security feeds are scrambled. Someone's definitely inside." Lysera pressed her palm to the door panel and felt the energy respond, recognizing her genetic signature. They shouldn't be able to breach this. Yet here we are. Yes, here we are. The doors slid open with a deep metallic sigh. Inside, the vault chamber glowed with swirling streams of energy, all converging around the central core, a massive crystalline structure suspended in midair by magnetic fields. 3 rogue operatives stood around it, manipulating control panels with frantic precision. But it was the 4th figure who made Lysera stop cold. A Kaleri elder, her former instructor, Terrell, stood at the heart of the chaos, directing the sabotage with flawless expertise. Ryan whispered, "Friend of yours?" "Mentor," she said softly. "I once trusted him with everything." "Oh," Ryan muttered, "so this is awkward." Terrell turned, his long ears drooping with strain but his eyes sharp with conviction. Lysera, you should have stayed away. You taught me to protect our world, she replied, not destroy it. I am saving it, he insisted. The council has grown weak. Peace with the humans will bind us to compromise and slow decay. The Caleri must reclaim their strength. Ryan raised a hand politely. I actually heard that humans improve most civilizations. We bring snacks, for example. Terrell did not dignify that with a response. Lysera stepped forward. This path leads only to ruin. Then let it, Terrell said, turning back to the control panel. The collapse will force rebirth. You're willing to sacrifice thousands. Change requires loss. Ryan whispered, I'm starting to think your mentor isn't very nice. He used to be, she murmured. Lysera lunged for the nearest rogue operative, knocking him aside. Ryan fired a stun burst at another, sending him sprawling. Terrell slammed his hand onto the console, triggering a surge of energy through the core. The room shook violently. You cannot stop this, Terrell shouted. I have already initiated the sequence. Ryan grabbed the final operative and wrestled him to the floor while Lysera sprinted toward the central console. Energy crackled across her arms as she reached for the override. You don't have the clearance to stop it, Terrell warned. I have enough, she replied, fingers flying across the controls. Symbols flared, resisted, then relented, but the core continued to destabilize. Ryan joined her, breathless. So, good news. We can't shut it down, she said, voice tight. We can only redirect the collapse into a controlled discharge. That sounds dangerous. It is. Will it explode? Only a little. Define a little. Enough to kill us if we're slow. Perfect. Terrell activated another subroutine, trying to counter their efforts. Lysera spun toward him. Stop this madness. He hesitated, pain flashing across his features. You were the brightest of my students. You could have led our people, if not for your stubborn independence. My independence is what kept me from following you down this path, she answered. Energy tendrils lashed outward, forcing Ryan to duck. Lysera, he called. I can hold the stabilization field if you reroute the discharge. You don't know how. Correct, but I learn fast, and I don't want you doing this alone. She hesitated, not because she doubted him, but because she realized how deeply that statement reached into her. A vow she had carried her entire life trembled, loosened, and began to break. Fine, she said quietly, but follow my instructions exactly. Always do, he said with a grin that was far too casual for their imminent doom. Together they took positions on opposite sides of the console. Lysera initiated the reroute sequence while Ryan stabilized the magnetic field, his hands moving with surprising precision. The core's energy flared, building toward a critical threshold. Terrell shouted, You'll destroy everything. Lysera didn't look up. No, I'll save what you forgot to protect. The chamber detonated with a blinding flash, but not outward. The energy collapsed inward, siphoned into the containment conduits, and discharged into the deep subterranean layers where it dissipated harmlessly. The explosion shook the city above, but nothing collapsed. When the light faded, the core hovered stable once more. Terrell stood trembling, realization crashing over him. Before he could flee, Ryan expertly tackled him. You're under arrest for everything. Security forces arrived minutes later, alerted by the energy spike. They detained the operatives and escorted Terrell away. Lysera watched silently, her ears drooping with sorrow. I'm sorry, Ryan said gently. He was important to you. Once, she murmured. But people choose their paths and I choose mine. When the chamber emptied, Ryan nudged her shoulder. You saved your world. She glanced at him. We saved it. His smile widened. So does that mean the council owes us lunch? Possibly. Good. Heroism burns a lot of calories. She laughed softly, surprising even herself. They stepped into the lift together, ascending toward the surface where the sky glowed with sunrise colors. Lysera felt something settling in her chest, not restraint, not fear, but calm. The vow she once clung to felt like a relic from someone she no longer was. Ryan bumped her lightly. Hey, after all this, how do you feel? She considered the question carefully. Changed. In a good way. In a way I did not expect, and do not dislike. His expression brightened with a warmth she felt ripple through her. "If you ever want to," he began, then stopped, clearing his throat. "Never mind, too soon." Lysera turned toward him, her ears arching upward with unmistakable fondness. "Ryan, yes, you may continue." He blinked. "Oh, well, I was going to say maybe when all this is over we could share a meal, a real one. Not ration bars. A diplomatic meal," she teased. "A personal one," he said softly. She held his gaze. "I think," she said, "I now understand why people choose to bind themselves." His breath caught. "Does that mean?" "It means," she interrupted gently, "that my vow has changed." The lift doors opened to the glowing morning. Lysera stepped forward, the air warm around her, her long ears tilting toward the rising light. Ryan followed, close enough to feel her presence but not claiming it. That, she realized, was what made her heart settle. The world was safe, the crisis resolved, and the vow she had once carried like armor had finally transformed into something far lighter, something she could share. When Ryan reached her side, she allowed herself the smallest, rarest smile, and he understood everything it meant.